while I was at the University of Tulsa, President Joe Wiley had led the charge to get this university accredited as a four-year school. Stratton Taylor, again, was very instrumental in that process by having the legislature give our Rogers State College permission to go seek accreditation as a four-year school with the Higher Learning Commission. So Stratton has been, as a Claremore Junior College alum, he's been integral in the development of this. And then if you back up one school before Claremore Junior College, the Oklahoma Military Academy is our most famous, the 52 years as the military school. But again, in 1919, we, through political action, we became Oklahoma Military Academy because in 1917, the then governor got into a squabble with the local representative here in Claremore and vetoed the funding for Eastern University Preparatory School. That was the first school on this hill. So 2 years later, right on the heels of the World War I ending, there was a gubernatorial candidate that had the ideal of having a military academy. The patriotism was strong, and so he had an ideal of having a military academy up here on the hill. And he didn't win, but his opponent that did win took that ideal and ran with it, and we became the Oklahoma Military Academy in 1919. And then, of course, during the Vietnam era is when it started closing. But again, there was a young cowboy from Bushy Head named Clem McSpadden that was president pro tem of the Senate, and he helped turn this into a community college because in 1969, I'll give you a bit of history, Tulsa Community Colleges started, and then Chancellor, now deceased, E.T. Dunlap, did not want another community college up here.
You remember that? Yes, I do.
And so, thanks to folks like Clem McSpadden and some wonderful folks from the community, Jim Summerlin and many others that, they salvaged this school and convinced the chancellor. They had to raise, I believe, I can't remember if it's $200,000, $300,000 for the general education fund for, all legal for higher ed, but that was the price tag that the chancellor told them they had to raise, and so Jim Summerlin did. He created a golf course, created a public trust, borrowed the money, and said, "Here, Chancellor." And the chancellor, people in the room told me that the chancellor pointed the finger at him and said, "Don't you ever think you'll have a four-year school on that hill."
I think I know that.
You know
I'm
that.
not sure
So that's a little bit of history, but Stratton Taylor come along at the right time, and so every state school has some aspect of politics in it. During the transition years, Joe Wiley got us accredited. They said you have to have a new student union and you have to have a real library. So Stratton Taylor, again, Senator Taylor, was able to get some funding for the library, and so the legislature and the Board of Regents named the library after Stratton because of his work day and night to get funding for that library. And then he got partial funding enough to establish the initiation of a new student center. Then we borrowed some money to finish it up. So that's kind of the Cliff Note version of Rogers State, and once again arrived here in 2008, and the OU board was the governing board by the time I arrived here. And so when they interviewed me, they asked one question that particularly was different. They did all the typical questions about the community engagement, my experience, and by then I'd also had an earned doctorate. I kept going to school, so I didn't want to be unemployed. And so one of the unique questions that the OU board asked me in the interview is said, "Can we interview your wife?" And I said, "Well, sure."
Oh,
and so
that was a lucky thing.
Yes. And so I credit her for getting the job because they asked her one thing: "Are you buying into this process? Will you move to campus and be a full-time first lady and do all the things a first lady does?" And she said, "Sure." So they said, "Okay, we'll hire your husband." So I credit Peggy with actually having that opportunity to come back to work here. But they wanted, they knew the importance of having a first lady to town and gown events, to do donor events in the house and so forth. And of course, Peggy has labored in a non-paid position. I always hasten to say that, but we're blessed to live in a beautiful home, but she's labored alongside me all these 15 plus years. In the early days, she would write checks, and I said, "At some point, you're going to have to quit that." But she would write checks to buy stuff for the president's residence, because she just wanted, and the RSU Foundation raised money to furnish the president's, because it had some structural problems, and President Wiley had to put new floors in it, and because part of it's built in the side of the hill. But she's been a great partner along the way, and we've got 6 grandchildren. 3 of them are at Rogers State now, so we feel like we've come full circle.